And are we live?
We are live.
Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome to In Top Form. We are here today. I don't know if is Leslie in the shop?
She is not.
She doesn't mind being. But we have a new producer. Now, we're in, this is a show on delegation.
That's right.
And we've decided that we're going to delegate some stuff that we're horrible at doing to somebody that's super knowledgeable. Leslie, can we use your real name or should we make up a
You can use my real name.
And what name do you go by? What's your last name now?
It is 100%
Drinkwater
forever.
So Leslie Drinkwater is with us. She is our producer. And you may be wondering, like, why do we not have the fancy software up that Leslie could use to make this look less primitive than holding up that piece of paper? But that's because Alex is not here. But soon this is all going to come together. It's not like we've been saying that for a really long time now.
No, I mean only 6 months.
You had an idea, by the way, for the delegation show.
I did. I said that, to be a true delegation show, we should have had 2 other people run the show.
But and this is a problem for people, we thought like maybe we could do it better.
That's
we
right.
didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so we didn't end up delegating.
So maybe Alex is the one that's winning.
Winning. Exactly. How do we look on that, Leslie?
Good.
That's exciting. We are so excited that Leslie knows what she's doing. And is our sound good?
Your sound is good.
Amazing. Everything is working. So you should know that Sam was here on time, but that I just rolled in from celebrating Robin's birthday.
Yeah.
Are they building an audience for us, by the way? Let us know if anybody pops in.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is a new time for the show.
3 people.
3 people. Okay, so who should we welcome? And for the
Greg.
podcast listeners, we're going to get going in just a minute. We've got some really good stuff for you. Greg Buckley?
Yep.
Oh.
Frank Lund.
Frank!
Oh,
This
nice.
is a heavy-hitting audience.
Yeah. I'm sure my mom will be in soon.
Frank will want to... I think this is good for Frank.
Yeah,
We
I
don't
think
know
so.
enough about whether this is going to be awesome for Greg or not. We can't say. I think so.
Yeah.
And then Steve said he was back channel communicating with me before the show saying, I don't have people, and so I'm not going to come. And I said, I think that it's really important for you to come because you don't have people, because that says you're totally adverse to delegating.
Right.
And Tucker is here. So
Yes.
we've got a lot. There's a lot going on here. First question that we have. So welcome everybody on the podcast and live, and thank you to everybody. As you hear things that you like, let us know. And Leslie is going to let us know if you ask any questions or want to jump in with an example. As always, we love our viewers' examples or challenges. We have viewers challenge us sometimes.
That's right.
We're not always gentle with that. Not as gentle as we should be. I mean, we're open to hearing what's going on.
Yeah. Mostly because we enjoy arguing.
I like that Leslie smiled at that too. We're
Yeah,
waiting to
that's
see
positive.
if Leslie recoils at some of the things that we say or not. But so far, she's nodding furiously. We're lucky to have her here because she is extremely experienced in all kinds of exciting aspects of this business. So why delegation is important? I think let's define it first. How do you define delegation, Sam?
So to me, delegation is what would be a good word besides delegating is the transfer of duties and responsibilities to people on my team.
And so that's the business version of it.
Right.
And we're going to talk about the personal version of it. Do you delegate anything in your personal life that you could talk about?
I try as much as possible.
So, for example, do you mow your own lawn?
I do not.
So you've delegated that.
I have.
Do you provide all your own medical care by going online and looking up like a symptom that you have and treating yourself?
Not all of it.
Not all of it, but occasionally.
Yeah, and I think that the big thing is I've delegated most of my decisions to Angela.
Ah, who is your wife? For
Yes.
those who are new to the... Leslie, how about you? Do you delegate anything in your personal life?
Oh, yes.
And do you have an example? That was an enthusiastic.
Oh, yeah. Take the dog out is a very big delegation.
Take the dog
Feed
out.
the dog. Mostly dog.
Are these things delegated to your husband?
Oh, yes.
So is your husband the main target of your delegation?
A lot of
In your
times.
personal life?
Yeah,
Yeah,
my personal life.
And Sam, you said to your team, which is broader. So let's switch back to business for a second. So you're giving out or assigning things to do to someone other than you.
That's right.
to people on your team. Now, that could mean employees or subcontractors or virtual assistants. Do you have anybody other than live bodies in the gym?
We don't do too much on virtual. Some smaller projects like graphic design, we will outsource.
Good. So one of the things I noticed in the definitions I was looking at before the show is that a lot of people would define delegation as giving something to someone to do, which was otherwise their responsibility, or that they, quote, should be doing.
Right.
Problem with that definition of delegation is it's saying I should be doing this.
Right.
Which is probably not true. One of the things you're going to hear us talk about is that there are all these things that we do in our business and our personal lives that we should probably not be doing and should be giving to someone else so we can play to our strengths, so that we can do the things that we're better at and faster at and more efficient at, and that we can be more of who we authentically are. And there's also this objection that was apparent in the definition where people think, oh, I'm assigning or kind of forcing someone else to do this. And what I've found through the years is there are all manner of things that I delegate that I would be either terrible at or wouldn't want to do, but the person doing them loves them.
Right.
A good example of this would be cleaning out my rain gutters. As you know, I sustained a spinal cord injury.
Yep.
Since that, one of my immutable rules, actually I shouldn't say that. Once I was able to walk again, for reasons that elude me right now, I balanced a ladder on a air conditioning unit and climbed up against the wall of my house to put a gargoyle in a little spot near the roof. Then when I came down, I realized that I had been a quadriplegic, was lucky no longer to be a quadriplegic, and that what I had just done was one of the most insane things that any person could think of, not even having had my experience. So I'm a slow learner.
Right.
But after that, I swore I would never go up on a ladder. I don't even like going 2 steps up on a step stool. So leaves come down, they get into the gutters. We live in the, what do you call this, the mid-Atlantic states? A lot of deciduous trees.
Yeah.
And so in the fall, these leaves come down and they clog up all the gutters and it causes all manner of mayhem. So I hired a guy to do this, and he loves actually doing it. And he charged $75 to do this thing that would be extremely dangerous for me to do and that I hated. I gave him $125.
Yeah.
And he said, no, it's only $75. I actually love what I do. And I said, no, it's $125 because whenever I call you, I want you to go, oh, that's the guy that paid me more, and to come right out.
Right.
So the thing is that delegation can be beneficial in many ways, and it should be beneficial to the person that you're delegating to. It shouldn't be some kind of, don't think of it as some kind of a punishment. You're not doing it right then.
Right.
So we've established that delegation is either in your business or personal life, taking things off of your plate that you're maybe bad at, or that you don't like to do, or that you're ineffective or inefficient at doing, and giving it to someone else who is better, faster, probably likes it more than you do, and can do that so that you can be, in both business and life, more profitable and more of who you authentically are.
Right.
Does that make sense as a definition? Okay, good. So I have a couple of questions here I want to work through in the show, and let's just talk about them. I want to visit why delegation is important, how to delegate effectively, or some algorithms or models for smarter delegation, some resources for delegation. And like, for example, we're going to talk about communication skills, because delegation could go wrong in a number of ways, but communicating with clarity what it is and having a system for following up and monitoring and setting up a mutual back and forth type of communication to check the meaning and how things are going can be very effective, especially early on. So let's start with this question of why delegation is important. And let's start with your business, and then we'll talk about mine. And Leslie, you have a business of your own too. So,
I do.
And you do delegate in your business?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
And yours is a very small business, right?
Yes.
Your husband's is a bigger video production business, but
Yeah.
but even though you're a small, and one of the things Sam and I have observed, so maybe this is some kind of like sexist view of ours, I don't think so, is that women are in business are slower to delegate than men are. And that seems counterintuitive because men are often reluctant to admit that they can't do something. You know? but they seem like the minute a man makes $1, he wants to get stuff off of his plate. I mean, we're grotesquely overgeneralizing based on gender here, but men want to get like stuff off of their plate. And women, and I say this from having worked with and counseled with lots of super successful business owners, that for them, delegation is a barrier earlier on than it is for men because they're less willing to do it. Later, it becomes more of a problem for men. And once women kind of make the breakthrough, then they're better at it than men, as is so often the case.
I think women have to feel like they have to get to a certain place to prove themselves just because of the structure of our society. So I think that once they feel like they've reached that point, it becomes easier for them to delegate.
And you can hear yourself. I mean, I know there's a delay. And so even though you're not directly mic'd, it's good?
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So we're going to have a woman's perspective, which we've been craving here. Because we only have had women guests, viewers, and listeners commenting. So, and we have a few female in-studio guests coming in, which will be good. But now Leslie's here to show us the errors of our ways.
Keep us in line.
So why is it important? What does it do for you in your business? Then we'll talk a little bit about
I mean, real specifically for me, I started the martial arts business where I was teaching a lot of the classes, doing the back office stuff, doing the marketing, doing sales, and there's only so many of me. In fact, there's only one. So there are limiting factors.
That you're telling us. I mean, I've heard about your cloning project. But are those Sikdars little? You don't grow them real big.
I mean, there's like an 18 to 22 year lead time on this.
Yeah, it's so slow.
It's takes time. Yeah. But so what was happening is like I couldn't teach a class and sell a client at the same time. So I lost a sale or delayed a sale.
Oh, right? Can I stop you?
Sure.
Because this is something that people don't think of. When you're failing to delegate, you're leaving tons of money on the table. So talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So typically, if you're teaching classes, the consumer or the buyer is not the same person taking the class because we teach predominantly kids. So if I'm teaching a class that's full with kids, their parents are waiting to be sold, but now they're gone because they took their kid home who needs to eat dinner or something, right? And then I'm teaching the next class and the next class and the next class. So you don't have the opportunities to be client-facing that you need in order to complete the sale. On top of that, it eliminates the ability to work on other things. So to develop a new marketing campaign or a new curriculum line. And the big thing for us was we always wanted to expand. So in order for me to have a second location, and now we have a third location in the works, I needed to not need to be in either location as running the classes or doing the sales. So, it was a step-by-step process. The first thing for me to do was actually remove myself from the teaching and commit to doing the selling. The next step was...
So that's interesting. So even though you are trained at a high level, and you were probably like 4th or 5th Dan
at that time, yep.
You chose to step out of the teaching. You were off the mat,
right,
and doing the selling. That's interesting.
Correct.
So how'd you make that decision? Which you were going to delegate first?
I don't know if it was the right decision or wrong decision, but in terms of like ownership, is okay. I wanted to be the guy who had the ball when it came to selling and enrolling new students.
And if your goal is to ultimately open other spots, you can't be there at the same time.
Right.
So that it probably was the right thing to do. I mean, in hindsight, looking back,
I think in hindsight it was for two reasons. One, I was better at teaching than I was at selling, which meant I was better at teaching than I was at teaching selling at that time. So I said, you know what? I can train people, as you know, right, to be really good martial arts instructors.
I've been trained by you to be a martial arts instructor. Yeah.
However, at that point, I didn't think I was good enough to train somebody to be good at selling, at least selling this particular product.
So you were better at cloning yourself on the mat.
Correct.
Oh, that's very interesting. And you were pretty good at the selling piece.
Yeah, I think I was.
And you have people,
which a lot I learned from you.
Right. And so, you have people selling now.
Correct.
So you're at the next level of delegation. So we're exploring this first question of why delegation is important, and you've kind of alluded to 3 of these. Delegation frees you up to do the truly important parts of your mission in life,
Right.
as well as in business and getting to enhance profitability. You would want to 80-20 this too. In other words, there are certain things that you're probably doing, maybe spending a ton of time, maybe spending 80% of your time on things that are not contributing at all, and finding out what that 20% is that you're both really good at, or maybe that's 5 or 10% of how you're spending your time, where you're both really good at it and it's really productive. If you could double or triple that, which still isn't a lot of your time,
Right.
you're going to have a massive, positive, probably exponential effect on the growth of your business.
And tactically, I think this was a technique I learned at one of your events, was that idea of going in, and evaluating your day, your week, your month, and making a list of everything that you do. And then I took that list and made 3 columns. So the first column was like, let's call it a low-level column, stuff that I could offload or delegate right away, that somebody else could be doing and should be doing. It could be, as simple as cleaning the gym or mowing the lawn at the gym, teaching classes, things that I could offload right away, meaning there was
feeding the monkey,
right? Things that there was somebody to do it and they knew how to do it. Then my second column was things that I don't need to be doing. Nothing inherent about those tasks required Sam to do it. It's just that the people I had didn't know how to do it yet.
Okay, so this is brilliant, because these are things where either you could train or you could delegate the training of them to do these things.
So then my priority became, okay, either, just like you said, I need to get these people training, or I need to develop the training program myself. And then what you're left with is, okay, these are the things that, at least at that time, only I can be doing.
Perfect. And hopefully, of the only I could do these things, they're all things that you like or love doing. So I have people tell me, I'm not going to have somebody mow my lawn and pay them $60 a week or whatever it might be, because I love that. Now, there are probably people, does your dad mow his lawn?
Oh, yes.
Okay, he loves it though.
Yes. God forbid somebody
Else touches that lawn.
Yes.
So he's an example of somebody that would say to me, I love doing it, and he does. Then there are other people that don't really love it. They're just saying that because they're afraid it's not going to be the way they want it, and quote, nobody could do it better than them. And that's a lie. There are always people that could do it better than us.
I think that's an important fact, is that there is somebody that can do it better than you. But it's a hurdle for people to get over, that idea that I'm the best martial arts instructor and I'm the best guy to market my school and I'm the best guy to sell it. That may be true. Let's stipulate that it is.
Because it's your product. So.
Yeah. So
let's pretend, because it's probably not.
The problem is, even if I find somebody that is 80% as good as I am, they can do that 80% of teaching while I'm doing that 100% of selling. So no matter what, 80% is better than 0, because I can only do one of those things at a time.
Now, you're constantly in this discussion talking about, and we're dancing around one of the second reasons that delegation is important. Obviously, it frees you up. Obviously, the third reason I have here is that it saves you time.
Right.
And you can choose to dedicate that time to the business, which should increase its profitability, especially if you're doing things that you're better at and that are have higher margin or whatever. But this middle one here, delegating increases the morale, confidence, and productivity of this. Here, it uses the word subordinates. I would use team members just as word choice. And there's some people that are going to say, well, I don't have team members yet, so we'll talk about that as a separate problem. But if you do, this is going to the whole idea, Jocko would call it decentralized command.
Right.
Of actually hiring for and selecting people who want to work as a team and who want to be productive members of that team. When you begin to give them genuinely important things to do that play to their strengths,
right,
and then you begin to document what their strengths are in their decision making, and you make sure you have clarity of commander's intent. I'm going to define all these things in a second. Then they can start to go. And this makes them feel more powerful and that they're participating in something that is greater than any one person. So let me just break down for you what we're talking about here. So in the military, there are two ideas floating around here: decentralized command and commander's intent, and they're inextricably linked. And so just so if people are listening to this for the first time, I'm a civilian. I've been privileged to work with lots of friends and people in the military, in various branches of the military service through life. So I've learned a lot of lessons there from them that I've applied directly in business very successfully. And there, delegation is essential, especially if you take like the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps cannot be staffed in the same way that the Army is. So you see people having these very broad jobs.
Right.
But that makes commander's intent really, really important. So if you want people on your team to be really good at accepting what it is that you're telling them and then getting it done in a great job and dealing with problems as they come up, you have to make the ultimate intent really clear. So a Jocko example would be, and then we'll give you an example from real life, Jocko would say, if I send out part of my SEAL task unit, tell them to go down this road and take this building number 5, and they get there and number 5 has been destroyed, or it's got heavily armed defenses that they can't take, they won't necessarily know what to do.
Right.
But if I say, what we really want you to do is be able to see this road to the north, and we want you to get the highest vantage point. So we think right now that that's building 5. If not, it might be building 2 or building 3. Even if building 5, 2, and 3 are a problem, when they get there, they're still going to know what the goal is, which is to be able to see this road coming from the north. So they're going to be able to react to information in the field that you don't even have any longer.
Right.
So decentralized command is empowering to those people out in the field, making decisions who have better information than you. In business, this would be training people who answer your phone with a script, because you really know, if you've been paying attention to the problems your clients and your customers and your patients have,
Right.
you probably know better than they do when they're first coming on. So first of all, it means screening for people who are really good on the phone.
Right.
And that doesn't mean taking forever, because you could get phenomenal reviews from clients, patients, and customers, but take 5 to 10 times as long on the phone as you should be.
Right.
What we're looking for here is that happy place where everybody goes away feeling pretty happy, but you do it in the amount of time that makes sense.
Right.
So giving them a script and selecting people that are good at this and then training them, but telling them why it is that they're talking to people on these phones,
Right.
what the ultimate goal of it is, so that if things come up, you've empowered them to be able to solve that problem along the way. That's essential to delegation. But there are a number of things that could go wrong that
Right.
we're going to get to. And I'll just give you a quick example that Sam's heard before, Leslie may not have. So Leslie, Sam's probably heard this before. If you and I were working together and you were doing some video editing for us, and then I said, hey, Leslie, this is a bad example because it involves food and I can't give you food, but if I said to you, you're going to go out and get some of your crazy food, whatever it might be. You're going to be near Anthony's, just a local restaurant. Do you mind if you're over that way getting me a turkey sandwich? Please. Here's the money, and here, buy yourself some, what is it, the two things you can eat, dairy and...
Potato chips. I can have potato
Okay,
chips.
so get yourself some potato chips and some
Yeah.
dairy, right? So I give you the money. Leslie's like, I didn't sign on for a discussion of my eating habits.
I'm so used to it.
So I give you the money. I say, could you get me a turkey sandwich, please? Would you do that?
Yes, I would.
And I ask politely, right?
Yeah, of course.
So you made a picture, by the way. Did you see her do it? You made a picture of a turkey sandwich when I asked you that. So tell me, what's the turkey sandwich you would get me?
I would get you
you're doing it
probably a turkey sandwich with lettuce, maybe some onions, tomatoes on a wheat roll, because I know you like wheat. And I would make them make it nice for you because I used to work at Anthony's.
Okay, perfect. So she has this actual image, as most people do, of what sounds like a really nice turkey sandwich. But that's a turkey sandwich that you've projected and thought about for me, right? So that's because you had that picture of that turkey sandwich, because I wasn't very specific. And human beings break down on these things. We all think that the other person knows exactly what I mean. So if I had said to you instead, like, hey, and if you are going to Anthony's, can I just get it on a plain white roll with mayo and lettuce? That wouldn't shock or horrify you, right?
No.
And if that's exactly what I wanted, you'd now get me exactly what I wanted, right?
Of course.
Whose fault was that? That was my fault that I didn't. Now, in a perfect world, if I was used to giving you sort of those type of specifics when I'm delegating to you picking up the turkey sandwich, and I didn't give them to you, in a perfect world, if we trained one another and worked with one another to achieve this, you would go, hey, Dave, I know you've got weird tasted turkey sandwiches and you always like the same one. Just so I get you the right one, what do you want? What bread do you want it on? So there are a million variations. Something as simple as a shared view of what's a turkey sandwich. So we're going to spend some time today talking about how it is that you avoid that. Because we're still on why delegation is important, but we're going to get to how to do it. Do we have anybody we need to owe answers to?
Yes, you do. You owe answers to Steve Richardson.
Steve is joining us.
How SOM's example works as far as training and delegating for a solo attorney, and how would you be able to delegate the selling aspect of it?
Oh, okay, that's a really good question.
Attorney.
Yep. So, Sam, you want to take a crack at that first, notwithstanding that you're not a solo attorney.
Or an attorney of any kind.
Right. Although you have told people that you were, which is probably illegal, but we've admitted to a lot of things here. That if people really want to...
It's not like these laws are written down or something.
In Texas, they're not.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. I saw the Joe Rogan comedy special called Triggered the other day. And he said something that I think is really accurate. In Texas, there are only like 3 pages of rules. And here's an interesting statistic from the show, and he knew people were not going to believe it. He said that there are more tigers in captivity, privately owned, in Texas than there are tigers in the wild in the whole rest of the world. And he described it as people, like a guy in Texas, was like, I like to get a tiger. And then looked in the 3 pages of rules, didn't see anything about tigers. It's pretty
Nothing
general.
about no tigers.
So he got himself a tiger, and then his neighbor was like, hey, where'd you get a tiger? He said, well, I just got one. Nothing in the rules bad. And the other guy's like, well, I'm not going to let that guy have more tigers than me. I'm going to get 2. And then it started a chain reaction of tiger buying. So let's just try to answer Steve's question.
Let's try.
But it's here's another thing. A lot of times you get better answers outside of your world.
Right.
Like you've learned things from me that have to do with a law practice that you've applied successfully or not in a martial arts environment, and vice versa. So Steve right now, as I understand it, and like I said, he was back channel communicating with me, which everybody could ask away. Steve has, and he could correct us, I think maybe some part-time assistants, but no virtual assistants and not a lot of people in the office.
So he if I'm understanding the question, he's asking about that piece of delegating the actual selling to clients. And the way, I think the only way you can do this is really understanding and mapping out what you want the sales process to be. What do you want it to look and feel like for your client? And mapping that out and understanding that, at least in my view, the idea of selling is building trust. So but that by the time they get to the end, they're ready to go, right? There's no more like adversarial sales because we've gotten there together. In order to build trust, I have to set the expectations for you. In order for me to set the expectations, I need to know what that's going to look like. So first I define the sales process for myself from point 0 to point 10. What is that arc going to look like? Set the expectations for myself, then set it for my student, parent, client, and then walk them through that process. So it is like creating a screenplay of sorts for the client to go through with you, and then you just remove yourself and have somebody else follow that script.
So I like what you're doing, and I'm going to go a little further for Steve back. So Steve, I don't know if you have anybody in the office, but answering the phone, for example. But that person is a salesperson for us.
Right.
So when a client calls in as a result of something that goes on even before this, marketing, and we'll talk about that, that person who answers the phone is going to do a couple of things that build trust too. One of the things they say is, may I ask you a few questions first? Because we want to make sure, we're not right for everybody, this is what we do.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we're a good choice for you. And if we're not, we're going to help you find one. And if we are, we're going to be able to proceed pretty safely knowing that we're going to make you happy and be able to do what you want to do. So that's building trust. So let's go back, Steve. In anything that you do that's marketing, and that could be web exposure, it could be advertising, it could be articles you write, it could be social media, whatever drives people to call, that stuff should explain. And when you call, somebody's going to answer the phone, and we're going to ask you some questions to make sure that it's a good match for you. And kind of, this is going to your point of setting expectations of what that looks and sounds like. So it takes away fear, which most of us in our businesses don't think people calling us are afraid, but they usually are. And it builds trust, and it creates kind of a fast forward to what's going to go on.
For us, running a martial arts studio, people have no idea what to expect.
And they probably don't for Steve's business either.
So, what are they imagining? They could be imagining, because they just saw UFC the night before, that they're going to be coming to this place and it's going to be cage matches. Or they're imagining something from Karate Kid or some, esoteric book or something that they read. And we don't know as the provider what they're expecting. And then ultimately we're going to fail to meet their expectations, and it's going to be,
if you haven't asked them, you mean?
Correct. And it's going to be hard to make the sale. So the flip side of that is we want to let them know what to expect. So we've created a process that, hey, look, all of our students start the same way. This is going to happen, then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen. And when they come in and that occurs, we're establishing trust. So
By the way, you are delegating to a system now. Correct. So you spent time creating a system which has other people involved in it, but is also the system itself is doing things that you've proven to work, and that would work for Steve. So has Steve said anything about his practice, like what the nature of it is or who the clients are that are coming in?
He was just talking about how he does have a scripted intake or scripts for new client intake.
Okay, so he does have somebody doing that. Awesome. So I think one of the things that Steve could do is, if he gets real clarity with them about what he's trying to achieve and who he wants and who he doesn't, that intake person could play a much bigger role in the selling process, so that by the time the person gets to Steve, he's not seeing lots of people that are ill-suited for him. That the client intake person is going to play a bigger and bigger and bigger role. And maybe he gets multiple client intake people, because if he's got somebody that's part-time, then maybe he's playing that role part of the time, and that could improve. If he's got somebody that's full-time, maybe as volume of the right kind of clients go up, he needs another person because more call volume.
But also, what you're talking about is inherent to the system, or part of the process of selling is not just selling to the people that you get, but eliminating the people that you don't want.
Yeah, I would say that's part of both the sales and the marketing process. In the marketing process, we like to create marketing that is going to, by its nature, attract the attention of people who we really want. So we got to think about that in advance. And if we do that right, we shouldn't have to focus on it, but it's good to, actually. It should at the same time repulse the 10 or 15 or 20% of people for whom this is clearly not right.
Right.
Because if you're taking up salespeople's time, or your time if you're doing the selling, meeting with lots of people for whom it's not right, you've kind of violated their trust already. So people think, oh, my marketing should never repulse anyone. Yeah, it probably should repulse some people who don't yet have clarity about exactly what it is that they need and want, and whether you're going to provide that.
Right.
So we've talked, and we're halfway through, this outline we have here, which is we've talked about delegation. What is it? And why it's important. The 3 reasons we've given you so far is it lets you do the things that are really important. So let me just ask you this to the audience. If you were doing more every day, or even a few days a week, of what you loved doing, and if you were doing more every day, or at least a few days a week, of what had higher margins, wouldn't your business both be simultaneously more richly rewarding, both financially and sort of existentially? It would be. And then what if on top of that, we delegated to our marketing system, or to the people that are taking calls, or whoever it might be, the task of making sure that we don't bring in people who are ill-suited or ill-mannered, and so that the bottom 10 or 20% that cause 80% of the problems aren't there, or they're largely eliminated. That's a really, again, an exponential change. That is not an arithmetic change in the numbers and the level of satisfaction. It's a huge change. Leslie, is there anybody else that we need to say hi to, welcome, answer questions?
Yes, Lisa Kovic.
Yes.
Came in, and
hey, Lisa.
Snyder, and Greg Buckley just liked something, and
you'll find Greg Buckley is one of our biggest likers and lovers, which is great for the show. Lisa doesn't really say too much too often. Did Lisa have a question or anything?
No, she just liked.
The audience knows Lisa, and Lisa is a Lisa is both a good delegator and the recipient of lots of my delegation. And Lisa is an awesome example. I don't think she would mind me talking about this. So it used to be, and Lisa's a pretty savvy marketing person and client relations person anyway. But it used to be that I had like this idea in my mind of what the voice should be for X and Y and Z kind of letters or correspondence or whatever it might be. And so at first, she really just started to pay attention to that. Like, what was I trying to do? And then what did I sound like when I was doing it? And now, for example, for those of you who are in the audience and get the emails that remind you, like we just tell Lisa what the topic is, and she goes ahead and crafts those, and they sound pretty much exactly like what we expect them to. So, and she picks the photos and the artwork and things like that are going in there. Whereas, and we're really confident that that's going to look awesome and be all aligned with what it is that we're trying to do. And that's in part because Lisa understands the ultimate mission, who it is that we want to be listening to the show, what we want to do for them, all of those kinds of things. So,
well, we also have Pat Flynn and
Patrick
and Frank Lunn and Lee Drinkwater.
Oh, Lee is on. Hey, Lee. So you know somebody on here. So Pat, I was just listening to you and Sam while I was in Southeast Asia. You guys did 2 shows, which were both awesome, by the way. For those of you who are not listening to the podcast yet, listen to the podcast. It's actually quite awesome.
Quite good.
And it's very different to hear the podcast, the same content. So I do listen actually to the podcast as well. So we make sure we figure out what we can do to make it better and better. So just a brief, I have no books today that I'm giving as resources. There is a book here, as you're so fond of observing. That is a book, things like that. But also a reminder, if anybody would like, so what we're showing are these moleskin style big journal. They're not gigantic. What size is that, Sam? Is that like a
5 by
size,
7,
probably
5 by 8.
And we have these, and I'm also doing a piece. Steve is chomping at the bit to get, so I'm going to send him his out because he won 2 weeks ago. And then Katie Harper won one last week. But the way you win these, and my notes on taking notes, and if you haven't listened to that show on the biological advantages of taking notes analog as opposed to digitally, do that because the science is really good and the show was really good. So the way you get one of these is you don't have to give us a good review, although we would like that. But if you just give us a review on the podcast, on iTunes, if you share one of the shows, we're going to enter you to win. And each week, I think through the rest of the month, we're picking winners. And then first week in May, we're also going to give away, I'm holding up a giant book, Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, which is just an awesome book. For anybody that listens to the show, you're going to love that. So just keep liking us, but most importantly, share the live show on Facebook and give us a star review, or better yet, even 2, 3, 4 lines, 3 words. Just write a review on iTunes. That really helps us out a lot. Then I've got for my little segment, Leslie, each week we have different kinds of segments where even though travel might not be a topic, we could have a travel segment. Oh, I've got some really good travel segments going on. But this is on health and fitness, which you usually do. But you and I could both talk about this. This is a Four Sigmatic product that you and I have been using for a fairly long time now. I met the president of the company, who is just awesome. And this is lion's mane and chaga, this particular one. It's a mushroom coffee mix. There's a little bit of coffee in here, but mostly mushroom. And I like their instructions, by the way. Mix, sip, think. Because this is being pitched not just as a delicious hot drink in the morning, but as a fairly, I'm going to say a mild nootropic, but I'm not sure that it's very mild. It's pretty profound. Yeah. And so this gets you going without that big caffeine jolt. And a nootropic is a substance which is helping your brain to work more efficiently and to think more clearly and probably more creatively. Really, really good product. If it's not in the stores, I don't know if it's in stores or not.
I don't think it is.
I just order it online.
Online, yeah.
And do we know the place we could order this? Leslie could put the link in. The name of the company is Four Sigmatic. So Leslie, if you could check that for us, we could put the link up.
Yeah. And
it's obviously, much to my dismay, not a It's not an affiliate link. It should be. So that we would make money when people buy it too, but we didn't pay attention to that. And again, we've got sponsors coming, and hopefully Leslie, if we get that salary negotiation right. If Leslie's not back in the future, you'll know we just couldn't make the number.
Right.
So now back to delegation and this whole idea of both business and personal delegation. So I have in my hand, and he's going to want this when he gets back, but this is Alex's tax return, which is pretty thick, by the way. I don't know what he's up to. But he's up to something. For those of you who can't see it, it's not as thick as the Tools of Titan, but it's
close.
It's pretty fat. Yeah. And so here is a place where Alex is outsourcing this. Also, one of our soon-to-be sponsors, I think, Kahuna, does Alex's bookkeeping. So for his companies, he uses software Xero, again, a form of delegation, because you can sit down and do all of this manually, whether it's inputting or whatever. Also, his business credit cards are linked to the software Xero. And then Kahuna, one of our sponsors, I think, you could, if Frank Lund is on, Frank is the CEO. So hopefully Frank will tell us what, if anything, he wants us to let people know about Kahuna Accounting. But Alex is outsourcing all of these things. The preparation of his personal returns, the preparation of his business returns, the bookkeeping to Kahuna, a piece of software, Xero, a piece of software, by the way, that coordinates with his business credit cards so that they automatically post whatever the type of expense is to the expense account. So, think of the amount of time that takes him, that allows him, which is stuff that he probably doesn't want to do anyway, but probably is not good at. We don't know.
Well, I just read an article last week, because it is tax time, that the average individual spends about 17 hours a year in tax preparation.
That sounds light to me.
Well, that's just on their personal.
Yep.
And then the average company spends about 275 hours.
Oh my gosh, 275 man or woman hours.
Correct.
So
on tax preparation.
That's
so if you think about, what you quote unquote bill at, or if you're, just a salary, divide that by 2,000, what your hour is worth, how much, money you're spending, quite literally, preparing your taxes, when you could just outsource it to a bookkeeping company or a piece of software or an accountant, and a combination of the three.
Yeah, again, if you add up the cost of that, and that comes to, I'm making this number up, $3,000.
Right.
And you could have, by dedicating that time. Now, this implies a certain amount of self-discipline. That if you're not doing it, you're then going to use this time productively in some other way. Or, by the way, not just because you hate doing it.
Well, yeah, exactly. I had when I worked in corporate, I had a friend, Chinese friend from communist China. And, we were always working in corporate, right? You always lament not getting regular or big enough raises. And, he said to me one day, he's like, Sam, the quickest way to get a 20% raise in this company? And I was like, pretty new. I was like, well, what is it? He's like, just work 20% less. So, I mean, this is like a giant, stodgy, computer corporate company that it was, for people, very easy to fall on that, that idea of mediocrity. Because if you're not going to get raises anyway, why are we working so hard? So that kind of ties back into what we're talking about, delegation, is money isn't the only motivator, but the right motivational pieces need to be there.
Yeah, and this is that idea, again, going back to Commanders at 10 and decentralized command, that you ultimately want to build a company of people working at every level who are super excited about what it is that they're doing and willingly accept that delegation, and oftentimes produce better results than you would having done it anyway.
Right.
So let's get to, in the last piece of the show here, let's get to this idea of how to delegate effectively. So I just want to run through a couple of things that we have suggestions here. One is pick the best people, and we'll go back and talk about these. Delegate in a way that people will willingly accept the assignment. I would go further than that and say be super capable. This is going to this idea of training and delegation together. Selection training. Have consistent standards. This goes to clarity of commander's intent and training again. Give ample freedom for the subordinate to complete the task. follow up and share in rewards and give credit and praise. So I'd just like to say that, again, some of these people are going to go, oh, that really? I just spent an hour listening to that show and you're going to tell me to share credit and praise? But there's a lot more in what we just said than that. And again, this is one of these things where people kind of give voice to this. They say, I do all that already. But if you actually looked at what they were doing, they're not delegating. What little they delegate, they're not delegating with clarity. They're often not delegating it to the right person. And so these are all things that we either aren't doing or we're doing poorly.
Right.
And that any improvement in them, and even if we're doing them pretty well, we're not doing them perfectly. And so going back periodically, so this is, we refer to it as the OODA loop. So scheduling time in your business and personal life 2, 3, 4 times a year. Like, go put it on your calendar now to have a morning to do this in your business and personal life, and going through and saying, what am I doing that I shouldn't be? Who could do that? Do I have anybody in the firm or the team that can? How do I make sure that if I'm going to delegate it, what I want is clear? How do I do follow-up? How often do I do follow-up? How do I reward this? Like, one of the things that we found out in my organization was that people have been there 5, 10, 15 years, and we haven't not only not given them a pin or a pen, we just haven't recognized that, except maybe to say, like, thank you so much for being here. Now, we do lots of other things for the team, but that's something that we've been ignoring. And we think of ourselves as, like, fairly good at this.
Right.
And there were these, like, just basic things that we weren't doing. So if you're hearing that voice saying, I don't have to listen anymore, or I already do this, that's probably a screaming call for help that you need to spend some time on this. So let's take these and pick them apart one at a time, and then we've got some really sort of very specific tactical hacks. So still a little bit at the strategic level. Pick the best people and delegate in a way that they're willing to accept the assignment, and I would add, extremely capable of doing it. So let's talk about that in your business. How is it? So you've described this process. I go through and I figure out what I should no longer be doing. You probably do that in your personal life too. So then that next step of who it goes to, and then the following step of what does the assignment look like. Talk to me a little bit about that in your business.
So, first, I think the mistake that we used to make in that idea of picking the best people was picking the person most like us, thinking that they were the best person.
We do that in hiring too.
Yeah,
we hire all the people that we like because they're like us, but now we don't have any diversity of skill set.
Exactly, and we don't have the people like us, whether we want to admit it or not, are going to likely have the same gaps.
Yeah, the same bad habits. Yeah,
correct. So one thing that we look at when we bring in new people is, first and foremost, because the nature of the business is dealing with people hands-on, day in, day out, is that they're a good fit for the culture of our gym. So they got to come in, and when they come in, what we do is we put them into a class setting before the interview. So we want to see it, like, physically, are they coordinated enough to be involved in martial arts? How do they interact with the instructors and other students and classmates? So we're going to know culturally they're going to be a good fit. And then, as we bring them into the team, we have a, for lack of a better word, a hierarchy of things that they're going to go through. So they're going to be a mat level instructor, and they're going to be working the front desk and answering the phones. And then from there, we can kind of see where people are better suited. So some of the team members, they're better suited to be on the mat, so they go into more of a instructor development pipeline. Some people are better suited to be on the phone, talking to people, more of the selling, so they go into that sort of, what we call a program director type of pipeline.
Now, when you decide what you're going to delegate to them from your list, or this could be, I guess, from Lonnie's list, how is it, so this is saying delegate in a way that people will willingly accept the assignment. So you're in part laying the foundation for that in selection. You're going to select people that are going to naturally want to do that. And then you've got training. You're going to train them to do these things, which is going to make them capable of it so that they don't make more mistakes than successes, right?
Right.
So this is really getting us, if we're doing all of that, then this is getting us to how do we communicate it and then follow up to make sure, at least initially, and then how can we start to back off of follow-up so that they know that we've really entrusted them to do the job. So talk to me a little bit about that. How is it that you communicate the delegation to them?
So, part of our review process is that question. I think I got it from Dr. Wyman, is is there anything you're not doing now that you would like to be doing? So as we're reviewing them at their current level, people will raise their hand in ways that you may not have guessed that, this is something that they want to be doing. Well, that's fantastic because I don't.
And you might not have thought of them for that.
Exactly.
Now, generally speaking, when people volunteer, they're volunteer for something they'll be good at. But have you ever had the situation where somebody's saying, I'd like to do that, and you just know intuitively they'd be terrible at that?
Yes.
And by the way, are they always terrible at that, or could we be wrong about that?
We could be wrong.
But more often than not, we're right.
Yeah.
So how do you handle both of those things?
I think, there's a value to delegation, there's a value to listening to your staff and what they're telling you, but you can't disvalue or undervalue your experience and your intuition. I think it's a really, really powerful thing. If you want to go with their request and let them do something, let them have like a test case or something that's going to be relatively low risk, and see what they can do.
And then I try to get agreement with them in advance. Hey, neither of us know if you're going to be good at this or not.
Yeah.
How do we know, like, what would happen where you know you were successful and where you weren't? And by the way, if you're not successful, we're just trying this. There's no harm or shame in that. We just need to know. You need to know because you'll be unhappy if you're not. So agree in advance in what the process is going to be to determine if they're good at that or not. So there's no later like humiliation in that or something for them. So I like that. Now we're at the point, we're at the turkey sandwich point here, where some people, it has to be a written standard operating procedure. Other people, it has to be a written standard operating procedure with training. Other people, you could give them a verbal order or have a conversation about it. By the way, this is a place where Jocko would say also the ego is dangerous, because people may have suggestions. If we've got a plan for what we want them to do, but they've been dealing with the public in the front of the gym or something, they may know more about solving this problem than we do.
Right.
So again, not to ignore your intuition, but to say, I'm going to be open to the idea that I may not have the best way. One of the ways we handle this is we say, somebody new is coming on the team, we say, hey, the team has figured this out. So we're screening for participation in the team. We want them to know the team. This is a team decision. This is what we want you to do. This is based on everything we know. Give us 6 months with this. Keep track of your questions and your comments, and obviously if somebody's serious, come to us. But you're going to know a lot more about the underlying assumptions and things like that. And I'm saying 6 months. Depending on the job, it might be considerably shorter. And then come to us. So we've got a shared idea of what's right and what's fair here.
Right.
So that they're not coming to us with ideas that may or may not make sense that we have to shoot down. We're waiting until they have sufficient information. But then when they do come to us, we have to get the ego out of the way. Are they making a great suggestion that we're just saying no to because it's not ours?
They're the new kid on the block.
Correct.
Yeah.
So a lot going on there in the delegation world. So you once talked about smarter goals. Also, I think that algorithm that you discussed, I've got these here, specific, measurable, agreed, realistic, time-bound. We also added ethical and recorded here. I like that. I would not necessarily have thought of that. Talk a little bit, because I loved your algorithm, that model, and then I added to it. Talk a little bit about how you would use these in delegation.
Yeah, so for personal goal setting, it is a little bit different. So it's still a SMART algorithm. In terms of specific is the same, measurable is the same. Instead of agreed, we say, this is for the individual,
right?
We say attainable, right? So I'm not going to create a goal that's going to set me up for failure.
And you're not going to delegate a goal that way.
Correct.
Or a
and
responsibility.
Then here we have realistic. Typically I say relevant for the individual. So maybe agreed and realistic is just interchangeable with attainable and relevant.
And I do think that you might delegate something where success is maybe realistic, or maybe we're pushing it, but it's got to be by agreement.
Correct.
Like I was just saying, you might fail at this, so let's talk about what that means if you fail at this.
And then the idea of time bound or time sensitive is super, super critical for both individual and let's call these team goals when we're talking about delegation. And it goes back to that idea of expectation. And early on when I first brought on employees, I had that mistake, because in my mind, it
was clear,
and as the the tip of the spear, the owner, the entrepreneur, you have that mindset. Like, if I need to do this, I'm going to stay up till midnight, 1 a.m, and get it done. Your employees aren't going to think that way, and they're not going to know kind of the urgency that you may have created for yourself. So, hey, I need you to do this. Okay. A week later, where is it? And then you get upset. Why isn't this done yet? Well, I never told them when I needed it by. So it's that, creating that expectation is, once you delegate things, what are if it's a finite project, you need the first deliverable by X date. If it's sort of like some ongoing process that they're going to be fulfilling, okay, this is kind of where I want this to be occurring, where and when.
I'll give you an example from my practice too. There is a paralegal, and she's got to take certain kinds of notes and things like that and turn them into something that the lawyer then works on as a document to make sure that what the client wants, we're moving toward that in the documents that'll carry out the strategic planning piece. And so if lawyers don't fill out certain things, or they don't get them to her by a certain time, and it can wreak havoc on the system. So we also have regular check-ins on the sort of the timeline of the thing as well. Now, a big question for a number of people that were talking to me about this before is, okay, let's assume that you're right about all of this, which we think we are. Having just said we keep the ego out of the way. How do I get people to do these things? Because I'm going to have to take a hit to my salary in order to go hire somebody to do it. This is the biggest objection to somebody who hasn't started, quote, delegating yet.
Well, I mean, that sort of logic is also like saying, well, if I spend money on advertising, I'm going to take a hit to my bottom line. We know, or marketing more generally, right? You don't spend money on marketing, right? Once you have your marketing dialed in after the testing or whatever, you're trading marketing dollars for more dollars.
Right.
So I think you have to change that mindset. Is we just spent the last 40 minutes talking about how delegating is going to increase your capacity.
And your happiness.
Correct. So you're not taking a hit to your bottom line. You're going to spend some money, but the return will either be more time, more happiness, or more revenue.
I one time was talking to somebody about this at one of our events. By the way, this is waited too long again in the show to talk about this. But for people in the family here, the sort of at our cost pricing, I think, ends either today or at the end of the month. So if you're coming to the live event in October in Phoenix for Business Black Ops, and you want to be immersed in this with some probably like 30 very, very smart business people that are having success in their own businesses and want to kind of cross-pollinate one another, then go to the number 3, daystosuccess.com. And that is where you can actually sign up for the event. If you're not a member of the family or you have questions, then just call Lisa at 610-933-8069, and you can talk about it. And we want to make sure that it's good for you too, for a couple of reasons. One, we have a very small group, typically under 40. And there are people that all, the new people come in at every event, but they all love it. Right. And so we want to make sure that it's good for the existing folks, but that it's a really good match for everybody else. So if you want to know way more about how we do these things, then come and join us at the live event. So once at the live event, I was talking with somebody who had this problem with either the marketing or the advertising or hiring people. And I said, it's like a trapeze. If you just keep holding on with the one arm and you never really jump and grab the other one, you're not going to move forward onto the other swinging trapeze. There is a point where it takes some strength of purpose. But every week, month, year that you delay that, you're leaving massive amounts of money on the table. Right. Now, it's also like marketing. The first time you hire somebody to do a particular job, especially if you're not good at this delegation, it may be a fiasco. Yeah. So then go hire somebody else. And you're way less likely, having listened to this, to make those kind of delegation mistakes than if you had never been exposed to this before. So I do think that there is, the fear is justified.
I think it is justified.
Yeah, because you may plummet to the ground.
Exactly.
When
you may crash and burn. Oops.
So, exactly. Well, so here's the thing. Listening to the show like this, and thinking about it in advance and planning it out, and doing it maybe at a time of year when you've built up a little bit of capital in your business and you can afford a couple months, and knowing that maybe I'm going to have to do without this thing for sure for the next couple of months. But like with advertising, you don't just leap into this. You don't go hire a team of 20 people. Like
Right.
People, a lot of times with their marketing, they'll buy a mailing list and mail a letter to 5,000 people before they've really tested
that letter, yeah.
And then they'll go, "Oh, that was horrible. I spent $7,000."
And then they'll say, well, direct mail
Doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
When clearly it doesn't, because it was a crappy letter and never tested. So you start small with delegation. You maybe don't even hire an employee. You get a 1099 person who's going to do more intake for you or help you with X or Y or Z. But you want to find things that you either don't enjoy doing or that can be done by somebody at a way lower price. And the chances that somebody's going to come in and totally fail you, they're not impossible, but they're pretty low, especially if you go listen to some of our other shows on pre-hire assessment and figure it out.
And I think that's what you're saying really is key here is there's probably one big problem that you're creating for yourself to prevent you from starting down the path of delegation, right? So ask yourself, if that problem was removed, how would things look in your company where you were successfully delegating to one or more other people, right? Then see what was the real root of that problem. Was it you need to save money? You need to seek out some different type of financing? You need to increase your own level of education and then move ahead.
So Leslie, we don't have the same constraints that you do in like real television. So we are allowed to like miss sponsors and go over time. Like eventually we have to be more disciplined. But did you have a good time?
I had a great time.
And we hope you're going to be back.
Yeah,
It's
I
at
learned
least-
a lot of great information. I'm excited to try that.
Oh,
I
this
take
is
Lion's
awesome.
Mane every day.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Oh, fantastic. Well, here, I'm going to make a gift of this. And as Sam will tell you, this is an awesome gift.
That is
Thank
good
you
stuff.
so much. I'm very excited.
So you're our first winner of our Lion's Mane Chaga coffee drink.
Very exciting. Well, I will make sure I give you a good review.
And well, thank you on the podcast too. Yeah, it doesn't matter that you're the producer. So just a reminder to everybody, and thank you for mentioning it, Leslie. There are several ways that they can support us. What are they? They could go give us a review on the podcast.
Yeah.
Or
share.
Or share this. They could write a review or do a star review. And to win, obviously, it would be wrong if we required you to give us a positive review. We won't like you if you give us a bad one, but we'll still enter your name to win one of these books. So this was a great show. I had a good time learning about how you do it. And Leslie, thank you. You made our lives much easier here.
Anytime.
And thank you to everybody that's listening in. If you know somebody or watching, if you know somebody who has problems with delegation, needs to be delegating more, but definitely share this. Share it on Facebook and let people know about the podcast. And so here's the criticism that we've heard. And we were being silly with the intro music, which we knew people would object to. So it's just there temporarily until we find what we really need. We're still waiting to get the whole system up and running, but we're very close now. And so here's the criticism we heard. I love the show. A number of people have told us that. But that intro music is super irritating, which is exactly why we put it up there. It seems counterintuitive, but it does make if you get through the intro music, it's kind of like Buds for Navy SEALs. If they get through that, then the real training begins. But if you can't take the funny intro music, you're probably not. So just tough it out. I had a good time. Thank you, everybody. Remember to be in top form. Live life. Have a great one. We'll see you. Thank you. So now, Leslie, I know that you may be preparing to scream all sorts of profanity, but we're still live here.
That's right.
So nobody's gotten to that yet. You'll be able to run that from your screen soon. Oh, there's loving that
This is
Leslie.
no longer live.
But this is. And people are loving that you may have used, like our suggestion that you might start screaming profanity is I'm still live. And you're still getting loving for that idea.